Hey friends, we have some news from our sponsor Text Control. They just released version 32 of their document processing library, which includes new core functionality such as document footnotes, SVG export, and more. You can integrate document editing, signing, collaboration, and PDF processing into your ASP.NET Core and Angular applications with TX Text Control. These powerful libraries will let your developer teams focus on their core competencies, while Text Control handles your digital document processing. Check out all the new features and see the technologies live in action by visiting the demo at demos.textcontrol.com. That's demos.textcontrol.com. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today, I'm chatting with Michael Washington. He's an expert .NET C# programmer. He's written extensively about all kinds of things like Blazor and .NET and AI on the web, and he's also a Microsoft MVP. Thanks for chatting with me today, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
So you are into AI right now, but I appreciate that you are a enthusiast and a skeptic, because I feel like maybe AI is going to have a fatigue moment where everyone's trying to solve every problem with AI. But I've known you for a while and you're very practical and very pragmatic. So how have you approached your entree into AI? Because I know you've even written on Azure, OpenAI, and C#.
Yeah, I use AI quite a bit for programming. It's in the GitHub Copilot and Visual Studio. I use ChatGPT and Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, to ask questions and help me finish this email or something like that. So I do use it a lot. However, I strongly feel that it's good for certain things, right? But actually not good for most things. So that's kind of a hot take from someone who is an AI fanatic, and I've actually written multiple books on AI.
So what do you do with that? Like, there are people out there, I wouldn't necessarily call them grifters, but it does feel like a lot of people put AI thought leader in their profiles on various social media sites, and it feels like they believe that it is the solution for all things. Well, I think it's a useful tool in my toolbox, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think Copilot, when Microsoft, started, branding everything Copilot, I thought it was brilliant, because I think it really describes how I think AI should be used, which is it's always a co-pilot to a human. And that's very important, even with the subject I wanted us to talk about, which is humans have desires. Humans have goals. Computers and AI does not. Its purpose is only to be a tool to facilitate humans' desires and goals and creativity. Right. So anytime someone talks about using AI for something where, the robot's going to do a thing, stop. That's not what it's good for. It actually can't do it. It cannot do it. AI, computers, they're not humans. They cannot do certain things that people are saying they can do. They're not going to take your job away. People who use AI may take your job away, but the AI itself is not going to take your job away. It's almost like someone saying, oh, the sewing machine is going to take your job away. No, a person using the sewing machine is going to take your job away.
I gotcha. Yeah, they don't have a motivation, right? Like,
they don't have a motivation.
I think that when we started, and you'll still see this on social media. Someone yesterday gave a very strange prompt to an AI, and they said you can only answer with one-word answers, and then and it was like, in one word, what is your thought about humans or whatever, and it would say one word like curiosity, and as you're reading it, I'm kind of going, wow, this is deep. Maybe the AI knows more than we're letting it on. And all of the non-technical people, kind of the muggles, are reading this, and they're reading into the AI like it's smart and it's wise. Like we've gone up to the mountain to meet the deep Swami who's telling us all. But then I realized that it's because they constrained it to one word that caused us to give more meaning to that word what did it mean by like it said, what's your word for humans? And it was like growth. That sounds pithy. It's like a tweet. It's like, ooh, that's deep. That's not deep. It's just constrained. So I was really interested that how it made me feel that, like, wait a second, maybe this AI is really smart. Like, no, it's not. It's just, that's a clever word that it picked statistically. And it made me kind of question my relationship with this thing that is not a brain.
Right. The biggest thing I found was because large language models, and this is what we're talking about, because AI encompasses a lot of things, vision,
yes, good point.
Sound, just a lot of things. We are specifically talking about the ChatGPT, which is a large language model. This is simply AI that manipulates language. Because it manipulates language, and we humans think in language. We think in language. You know what I'm saying? That's why it seems so real to us. That's why it hits us in a way that, looking at a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet doesn't. The language is why it makes people go, well, wait, is it smart? Is it alive? No. It's manipulating language in a mathematical way, period.
Yeah.
All it does is complete sentences. That's it. But
I wonder what you think about this. I like that they didn't give it a name. I found that, like, over the last couple of years, the fact that we have all of these women coded, names, Cortana, Siri, Alexa,
right, yeah.
caused us to talk to these things like it was like a gendered secretary,
right.
which isn't appropriate, has all kinds of baggage associated with it. I feel bad talking, saying to Alexa to turn the lights on and off, as if Alexa is a person who lives in my house. So I do give them credit for not giving it a name that meant anything. Like, our relationship with intelligent assistants is changing because ChatGPT doesn't sound like anybody's name.
Right.
But then they give it a voice, and they had that whole Scarlett Johansson thing.
Right.
And it's like, make it less human. The UI should not be one of talking to an entity. You know what I mean? It seems really problematic.
The cat's out of the bag on that one. Just the other day, because I have the ChatGPT app on my phone, and just the other day, some friends and they're at my house, and we were playing, The Witcher on Xbox, and we were stuck on a certain place. And I was able to take a picture of the screen and then ask in a natural voice, hey, we're stuck at this certain place. What should we do? And the voice that, gave us the answer is this woman's voice. Sounds totally like a human, using language that was very conversational, like a normal human being. And that experience,
too natural.
It's too hard. I'm sorry. As far as saying, try not to make it too human-like. Okay, that ship has sailed.
But that's a good point.
At the same time, I'm insisting on saying all this is a computer completing a sentence. I prompted it with a picture, which it then OCR'd into text. I gave it a prompt. Please tell me how to get out of where we are. It then, using retrieval augmented generation, again, we'll get into that, but it's just a mathematical thing, and it's spit out, but using language makes me feel like I'm talking to a human, but that's all it is. It itself doesn't have any desires. It itself, you know what I'm saying? All it can do is answer my questions. Versus when I was writing the book, my last book, my niece, she's now 2. It's actually my grandniece. She was, about, a little bit over 1 year old. So as I was getting so deep in this ChatGPT and all that sort of thing, I kept watching her, and it then hit me. This 1-year-old child is so much more advanced than ChatGPT. It's not even funny. You know what I'm saying? Meaning, I could give ChatGPT these really good prompts and have these experiences where I'm like, whoa, this thing is whatever. But the 1-year-old, I could say something to her, and then she could come look at me and then go, no, I want the block. Give me back the block. And I'm like, that's the difference between a human with wants and desires and a soul versus this computer, which all it can do is respond to my wants and desires. So I'm like, you know what?
Exactly.
There are humans and there's computers, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the point there is that, like, right there, a 1-year-old already has like opinions and desires, and until we get much, much, much farther along, that's just not a thing. So we shouldn't be thinking about it that way. And then, to your point, though, that ship has sailed, so it's unfortunate. But you set off to write an application that would make your life easier because you like to write fiction, you like to write books. And I have seen people try to generate entire books or a new season of Seinfeld with very large language models. And in my opinion, it consistently generates B minus.
Not even B. No, it doesn't get that high. No,
it's fine.
F.
You don't think?
F
You say
minus.
No? Okay, you
and
say
here's
F.
why.
Okay.
And I'm glad we began the conversation the way we began. In order to write a decent Seinfeld episode, even a knockoff, right? It requires a human that has, I want to say soul, because that is a loaded word, but
a guiding hand.
That has their own wants and desires that truly originates inside them. So to say they have a soul is, I guess, really the best word, because that provides the inspiration that is expressed through creativity. Therefore, the AI, the tool, the large language model, can only be a co-pilot. So to bring you back on the book thing, what happened was, like I said, I wrote my books on AI, and I wanted to find a good use case for it. So I can say to people, here's a good use case for it, because I found so many things where are not good use cases for it. Okay.
Right. Well, that's a good point. I mean, if you're skeptical about a technology, whether it be crypto or AI, like, all right, let's just build something and see if this thing has any bones.
Right, exactly. So something that I've always had a desire to do is to get back to do more fiction writing. I've done some in the past, but I want to do more. And every time I sit down to work on a book, I may get the first few chapters done, but then I have to go off and do some things. And when I come back, it's so much time to reread where I left off, and I like to plot things out with the characters and the the different themes and plot points or whatever. So I use a program called Scrivener, which is well known, and it's a place to just put all your notes and organize them, or whatever. But even reading through that, it takes time. And then after I finish reading through it, I may write maybe a couple of paragraphs, and then I have to go back and redo it. So I always wanted a database where it could understand this and that sort of thing. So I figured this was a good, tool to make. So I ended up making an open source application. It's hosted at AIStoryBuilders.com. It's totally free. It's on GitHub. It's totally open source, and I'm not selling anything. But I was trying to say, can I make a tool to help me write? And let me fast forward to the end. I found out that it's only good for writing one paragraph at a time. And I still have to keep editing that paragraph.
So I've talked before about how I don't like the word hallucination because it again implies a brain, a mind. So the inverse of that is grounded. And I was talking to Maria Nagaga, who manages AI for .NET, and she uses the term grounded a lot. We want to keep it grounded. So she was showing me how to keep something grounded in a product catalog as we were writing a chatbot. It sounds like you're keeping it grounded in your desires and your characters and your database of scenes, timelines, locations. And that's your way to avoid fabrication.
Yes, I am actually doing the tightest grounding of that I could possibly think of, which is, and one reason why I have to do that is you're writing a book, right? And you have a character, his name is John. He's a 50-year-old man, and he's a stockbroker. He then has a flashback to when he was 5 years old. And, his mother was making lunch for him. When you ask the AI to help you write this paragraph, if you don't really ground it tightly, it will write a line that says, his mother said, little Timmy, finish your lunch. And Timmy goes, you know what, Mom? I've got an appointment and I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to drive to my appointment. You know what I'm saying? Meaning I found...
Yeah, it just starts to veer off the rails. The farther it goes, the more likely it is to freak out.
But also, if you don't tell it, little Timmy is 5 years old. Well, then the AI is going to go, well, you didn't say little Timmy. In this paragraph, there's nowhere that little Timmy's 5 years old. So that's why the program that it wrote, even though you say, please write a paragraph about little Timmy, he's having a flashback, but his mother wants him to finish his meal. I then have to, in the prompt, say, you are currently writing a chapter in a book. This is who little Timmy is. However, this is little Timmy at 5 years old. The house looks like this. It's summertime. It's actually raining outside. If you give all this information to the AI in the prompt, and this is what they call grounding, and using a process called RAG, retrieval augmented generation, to provide that grounding, the AI does a good job. And in the paragraph it comes out with, you're like, wow, this is pretty good. Let me make some changes here and there, but it's pretty good. And then you move on to the next paragraph. So that process of gathering all that and putting that together, it's a lot of code that I ended up writing. But like I said, it's all available free on GitHub. And you can see how I'm pulling that information in, constructing the prompt. And again, you can play with it. And again, it's online. You can just log in and just use it. But it does, in my opinion, I feel it came out pretty good. And it really has helped me with, getting back into fiction writing, because it does make things faster. I can get 1,200 words out in about a 15-minute session of writing. That was not possible before.
Okay. So then let me challenge you then, because you said it writes F level work. I said B minus. You said F. We're both agreeing that if you tell it to write a book, it's lousy. But you're saying with context, with RAG, with grounding, with focus, and like here's a list of characters, here's their motivation, here's all this context.
Remember, I have to build those characters up. I have to say the locations. I have to put the timelines in. So there is a lot of building up. I did do one thing that helps out a lot. If you just start writing, you can write a paragraph, you hit a button, and then the AI will examine the paragraph, discover new characters, add them to the database, discover attributes about those characters, add that to the database. So you can just start writing and build the database as you write, so that then later in the story, things that you've already talked about, little Timmy has red hair. It'll grab that from something you wrote earlier. So then later on, when you say, okay, please help me write the next paragraph, continue the story. It looks at the beginning, the story. It'll start to continue the story, but then it'll, make sure that, the guy's hair is still red because it's in the database. So I did put a little feedback loop to help build the database, but the database still has to be built by the human, which takes me back to my original thesis, which is AI, it has no soul. It has no desires. It has no creativity. But if you organize things in a certain way and feed the AI through the grounding, it actually can be helpful.
Hey friends, I really appreciate our sponsors at Hansel Minutes, and today I'm talking directly with JD from Raygun. JD, I'm a .NET developer. I use Raygun in production. What are some of the great improvements happening with Raygun for .NET?
We're making a huge range of improvements, Scott. By way of background, I'm a .NET coder myself, Visual Studio 2002 represent, and all of Raygun is actually built with C# in the back end. But what we've been adding for .NET developers is improvements around handling things like portable PDBs for symbol handling, better offline storage. We've even been doing work around how we handle asynchronously sending the messages off to the service to ensure minimal impact within people's code. So we're actively always heavily investing in ensuring we support the .NET ecosystem to the best of our ability.
This is cool. All of this and more, because Raygun for .NET Aspire is also happening, so you can check that out, a crash reporting client for .NET Aspire apps, all things .NET, all things Raygun. You can check it out at raygun.com for a 14-day free trial and use the code Hanselman for half-price monitoring for your first month. So let me ask you this. We've talked before in previous podcasts about this concept of a context window, right? So you write a sentence in a language, English or any language. It gets broken down into tokens and ultimately numbers. And then the AIs have this window of context. And for a while there, it was a couple of thousand. And now it's a couple of 100,000. And some companies are saying it's millions. But what if you have so many details, so many timelines, so many characters that the context window is too large? How do you?
And that's my thing.
What kind of limitations?
That is my
have
thing.
You hit?
So the context windows grew because I've been working on this for over the past year. So the context windows went from, a percentage of what they are now to, you're right, certain, Claude, Anthropic, man, huge context windows.
Right. Are you using ChatGPT 4 or which are the
ChatGPT 4.0 is the one I love. And that's, of course,
and that's the one behind your application.
So if you go there, that's it. So the thing I found is, especially for this use case, you don't want to make the context too wide. You know what I'm saying? Some people, they go, well, if I want the third book in my series, if I feed the first two books into the AI, then it'll write the third book. That will never, ever, 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 ever work. I mean, it'll work. You can do it, but it'll be horrible. The quality will be horrible because to get through a whole book, it requires a lot of human motivation, desire, and direction. So that's why I'm saying you need to have it just do one paragraph at a time. So what I'm doing here is by breaking it down by characters, locations, attributes of the characters, that constrains the AI so that it performs, doesn't get off the rails, and goes toward the direction that you want. You see what I'm saying? Because otherwise, it'll start taking whatever idea you have. It looks inside its database. It's been trained on, Jane Austen and Sherlock Holmes, and it throws all that in to it. It's like, sounds good. It's like, no, this is the most horrible thing I've ever read in my life.
So are you finding that the paragraphs that it's writing for you are different than you would write, or is it like GitHub Copilot? Like I was working with Stephen Tobe this morning, and we were doing some coding, and he had his intent. I could see it in his eyes. He was starting to type, and then GitHub Copilot saved him the typing. But what was written was literally the direction he was going. Is it writing the paragraph you were going to write, or does it surprise you and write something you would have never written?
Let's take a moment to talk about fine-tuning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is my opinion, and some disagree, so that's fine. But I'm of the school of thought that when you fine-tune a model, I'm sure people have heard about this, but when you fine-tune a model, you should fine-tune a model to change behavior, not to add content. So to answer your question, the paragraph that it would write was, because either I say, continue writing from continue writing the story. So it kind of goes, so if I start off and say, Tim jumped in the taxi cab on his way to the airport for a big meeting. And then I say, continue the story, the AI would come back and say, Tim arrived at the airport, got out of the cab, and got on the plane. Okay? But it uses a writing style that's not quite mine. What I found with fine-tuning was that if I rewrite it, to kind of make it my more writing style, like, no, he didn't jump out of the cab, he exited the cab. No, he didn't jump on the plane, he strode through the concourse to the plane. So I was able to then take that, run it through fine-tuning. Then when I ask it to write a paragraph, but using this now fine-tuned model, the writing was more my style. So what I did was I also built into the AI Story Builders a button that if you have a bunch of stuff written, and I think you need to really write about at least say three chapters worth of material, you can just hit a button. It creates the file that's needed for fine-tuning. You can then upload it to OpenAI. You have to probably wait like maybe an hour or so, and you get back a fine-tuned model. You can then, inside my application, say, please now use this fine-tuned model, and then you should find that the paragraph that it gives you is more closer to your style and less ChatGPT-ish. So that was another thing that, worked for me.
Yeah. People hear fine tuning a lot. That term is used, but I think people maybe not understand what they're providing. Like there's the very large language model you mentioned, ChatGPT 4 or 4.0. Fine tuning, is it a delta? Is it more grounding? How does it relate to?
See, that's the thing.
Grounding?
I don't think that you should ever try to use the fine tuning process to ground a model, because one thing is these models have so much information already in them. You know what I'm saying? That if you need to add information that it doesn't know about, for example, your company's private database of information, use RAG, retrieval augmented generation, which again is what's essentially I'm doing with AI story builders. Use that to provide more information. Fine tuning, in my opinion, should only be used to control, like I said, in my case, the writing style. Basically the behavior. It should only be used to control the behavior, meaning the information in the model is the same. But remember, does it want to write like Jane Austen or does it want to write like Tom Clancy? That's behavior. It's, they both are covering, characters and that, but the behavior is different. That is what I feel fine tuning is really meant for. And I always advise people when they go, hey, I want to fine tune the model. I'm like, unless you're fine tuning it for behavior. No, you do not want fine tuning. Just use RAG. So, but that again is my opinion and others may disagree.
So when we hear about RAG, we usually think about databases, but you and I have something in common. We are big fans of
text files.
using data stores, and a file system is a perfectly good data store.
Perfectly good.
I like XML. You like text files,
yep.
Right? Anyone ever give you a hard time for putting a bunch of text files in a folder and calling it a database?
Not to my face.
I mean, I like it because honestly, a file system for a certain kind of data is a perfectly reasonable thing. We happily let people put JSON in storage accounts in the cloud, but if they put it on the file system, we judge them for their choices.
Exactly. So no, it works great. So so for AI story builders, I wanted obviously to keep it. I wanted to make it free, but I don't want to pay for databases and having user accounts and all that. So the way AI Story Builders works is all the information, and of course, the way large language models work is when people type things in, they're turned into tokens, like you mentioned, but then we turn them into embeddings. And an embedding is these massive numbers of vectors. All that is saved to text files. There's two versions of AI story builders. One is a Blazor Maui app that you get in the Windows Store. You can download it for free in the Windows Store. But then another one is a Blazor WebAssembly app that just pops up in your browser and just works. What happens is that as you type things, I'm creating these text files in temp storage. And when you navigate away from the page, I go in, I zip them all up, and I put them in local storage. So it's in the web browser. So if you go to the applications tab, you'll see this, long string, which is basically the contents of a zip file. So then when you say, I want to look at the story, and you say, I want to look at the story, the code goes into local storage, pulls that out. It's really a zip file. It unzips it into, this temp thing where all these text files are, and then the code runs because it's the same code that the Blazor Maui app uses. Because the Blazor Maui app, I just store those text files in your Windows app storage. So I was able to use the exact same code for both the Maui app and the WebAssembly app, but it's just text files. There's no database.
When I think of writing a novel, I've got a friend named Lauren Bucas, who's a famous science fiction writer, and she always does details and timelines and locations and characters. And I kind of imagine like that guy from, I think it was Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Right, with the lines and the strings and the lines. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And basically, when I think of an author, I imagine a giant wall filled with Post-it notes with everything, right? what I'm hearing is that AIStoryBuilders.com is that, and they're not in Post-it notes, they're in text files. Yep. And then the magic is the AI can look at the giant wall full of Post-it notes, and that's the context that it needs to help you move your story forward.
Right, because it's good at that. Computers are good at taking a bunch of data and figuring things out and not getting confused. That's what computers are good at. But creativity, not so much.
That is really interesting. That is a very practical and pragmatic, calling back to the beginning of the conversation, as you're a well-known pragmatist, way of, rather than trying to build some app that said, I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff and I want to go to sleep, and when I wake up, I want a book. You're having it give you a step forward. And I'm sure that maybe it writes a paragraph, you make a change to a location or a character, and then you refine. So it's about iterative improvements.
Iterative, exactly. That's it.
Fantastic.
And every Microsoft Copilot application that I've been dealing with, that's what it is. It's always iterative. I mean, think about the ChatGPT goes, the last thing it says to you is, did that answer your question? Would you like more information? Copilot.microsoft.com is at the end, they always have the links, because they know it's iterative. Yeah, I can't think of a single Microsoft Copilot application where they truly intend for you to ask it to do something. It does that thing, and that's the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, let's think about this. Can you think of a single situation where, you know what I'm saying, where that's how the thing is supposed to work? No.
Very well said. Very well said. So folks can go to AIStoryBuilders.com. And the documentation is very easy to find, documentation.AIStoryBuilders.com. And if they head to your main website, which is ADEF web server, ADEFwebserver.com, that's a link to all of your sites. And you've got a ton of sites. You've got sites on Blazor Data and Blazor Help and blogs and explorers and all the kind of stuff that you've been working on over the years, including books that they can link to that you have published up on Amazon. Thanks so much for chatting with me today, Michael Washington.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your show. I listen to it in the car, every week. And I'm just so grateful that you allowed me to share something.
No, I learned a lot, and this is going to have me go and explore. And my son loves to write stories, and I'm going to go check out AIStoryBuilders.com as well. As you pointed out, it's available on the Windows Store and as a PWA.
Yep.
All right. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.